In 1969, I was 12 years old. I was living in Douglas in Queens, and we had a family of five. I had two sisters, and my mom was a seamstress. So one day, my mom came to me, and she said, try this coat on," and it was a woman's coat. And I said, "Okay," and she used me as a model to hem the women's coats. So she gave me this green button-up coat. It had black buttons, big black buttons, and it was flared out at the bottom. It was very feminine looking. I was like, this feels really good. I wasn't sure why it felt good, but I know it really felt good. That continued for a couple of years. And after that, I started experimenting, and when no one was home in my house, I went into my sister's room and took their clothes and their stockings, and it felt even better. Thank God I had two sisters, because they would blame each other who was wearing their clothes. Little did they know it was me. As years went by, just dressing up at home wasn't enough. I wanted more excitement. I wanted to be seen, but not seen, actually. But I just wanted to be out in the fresh air as a woman. So when no one was home in the house, and I knew people, my parents and my sisters weren't going to be home for a couple of hours, I would dress up. And so one day, I live in a garden apartment, two-floor garden apartment. We were upstairs, and there's a downstairs. So one day, I dressed up, put on my mom's wig. My mom had a couple of wigs in those days, and walked down the stairs, and I just looked out. We had a glass screen door. So I'm looking out at the screen door. I'm looking, making sure none of my neighbors. We were in a courthouse. So in the courthouse, there's a couple of doors, leading to two apartments in each door. So we had quite a few people there. So, and I was taking a big chance, but the urge in me was so strong. It's almost like I didn't care that I got caught, but I did care that I got caught. But the urge just was taken over, where the fear was put aside. It was more of the love of dressing up and the way I felt more than the fear. So looked out the door, didn't see anybody, opened the door, took about 2 steps outside, and the neighborhood bully who lived right across the street from me, he was like 3 years older than me, big, heavy-set guy with muscles. We were only like 17 at that time, but he was a lot bigger than me. So I saw him, and I said, "Oh, shit." And I started walking really fast with heels on, so you could hear me clopping. And he sees me, and he starts following me, because I guess he thought he never saw this girl in the neighborhood, or I wasn't sure if he made me and he was going to approach me. So I walked really fast, went down these steps that led to the backyard, and went down the steps, and I could hear him when I went up the other side in the steps. I could hear him coming down the steps. So I started running in the heels, went around the building, and ran back up into my house with my heart pounding. And he never said anything to me after that. So I guess he never figured out it was me. And that was my first time out, as a woman. And it was scary, but at the same time, I wanted more. Now that I had that first experience of being outside, the next thing my mind was saying, maybe I should go to the department store, dress as a woman and go to a department store. Maybe I should, wait till nighttime and take a longer walk around the block. So it went from there. It just kept escalating and steamrolling. A couple of months after that, I was dressing again, and everybody was away. My dad was working, mom was working, sisters were at school, and I was fully dressed, just walking around the house. I wasn't going to go outside. And all of a sudden, I could hear the front door, which we live in an apartment, so the front door is like next to all the bedrooms and everything. So I could hear the front door key go in the door, and I was dressed, and I'm like panicked. I was shaking in my boots, literally. And the door opens up, and it was my sister's husband at that time, who was a cop, a New York City cop. And he opens the door. It was like looking at a deer in headlights. I looked at him, he looked at me, and he just said, "Okay, this is between us." Closed the door and left. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'm done. He's going to tell my sister's going to tell my mother. But I found out years later that he didn't tell anybody. So I was cool. And when I reflect on this whole thing of my childhood from the time I was 12 and now up 16, around there, the urge in me overrode the fear in me, because I knew inside, I knew who I really was, and that was Nancy. And that was actually, that those couple of years from 12 to 16 was the birth of Nancy. So in 1990, I was about 30 years old, and was getting ready to get married. I had a fiance. We were 6 months away from our wedding time. She was 2 months pregnant. So she called me up one day and she told me she was going to be late to come home. And I said, fine. So I went upstairs, went into my stash, got my wig and my clothes out, put the makeup on, not expecting my wife to be home. Maybe around 6:30, with time she usually comes home, which it wasn't supposed to be then, I hear the doorknob turn and the key go in the door in the downstairs entryway. I said, oh shit, and we were in the attic bedroom, so I started stripping down, threw off all my clothes, wiped my makeup off, threw everything under the bed, and at the same time when I had everything off, I was completely naked also. She comes up, she goes, and I'm like looking at her, and she could see the fear in my eyes, and she goes, what's going on? She actually thought I might have had a girl underneath the bed or something like that. I was hiding somebody, I was cheating on her, but it was me dressing again. That's the first time she knew about it. We were living together for a couple of years and she had no idea. So she came to me and she said, don't like this. I want you to stop. If you want to get married and have children, you got to stop. So another time in my life, I'm throwing everything out, thinking in my mind that marriage and children are going to fix me. So 7 years went by. We had 3 kids, bought a house together, and I started dressing again. The urge was too strong. I was trying to fight it. I had no women's clothes, but I started buying. I started going online and buying women's clothes, going to the store, buying women's clothes. So I started, I was dressing again without her knowing it. But she was suspecting things, because I used to go downstairs in the basement and late at night, after we both went to bed, I would go downstairs, sneak down and go on internet sites of cross-dressers and transgenders. And she knew I was going down there and she suspected something going on. But she never said anything to me until, she noticed that her clothes someone was wearing her clothes. And my kids were like 5, 4, and 3, so they weren't wearing her clothes. So she approached me and she said, are you wearing my clothes again? And I said, yeah, I am. I just, and I started crying. So after getting caught, she said, we need to get divorced. And I said, we can't afford that. So what I ended up doing is I built an apartment downstairs. I lived downstairs. She lived upstairs. As those months went by, she started dating and actually going away on the weekends and leaving me with my 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and 1-year-old to take care of, as she was with her boyfriend, on the weekends. So I was home with the kids one day, and the weight of the feeling of everything, getting divorced and not being able to dress, not being able to be who I really felt I was inside, it just got overwhelming. I started crying. I called my brother-in-law up, who was a born-again Christian, and he said, have you tried going to your local church? So I drove to 2 churches, 2 of them were closed, got to this one church, and I pulled in front of the place, and the pastor pulls behind me in a car, and he goes, what's wrong? And I told him, I didn't tell him I was a cross-dresser. I just said, my marriage is broken up and this and that. He said, are you willing to take Christ in your life? And I said, yes. So I said the sinner's prayer, and God saved me for a little while, because what I did was I started going into the Bible and with Christian men, by my side, who was all denouncing dressing as a woman. Like in Deuteronomy, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they tell you a woman shouldn't dress like a man and a man shouldn't dress like a woman. And that was being, fed to me, that I shouldn't be doing this. So I got involved in the church, even ran a men's Bible study. So she became a born-again Christian as well. And things went really good for a while, because again, I was able to suppress the feelings. But then it started coming back again, the feeling that I need to dress. I can't do this anymore, I need to dress. So in my Christian walk, maybe a couple years in, I started dressing again slowly. And she caught me again, so she says, that's it. And we got, so I said, we went to therapy first together, and the therapist was telling her to let me try on girls underwear, go to bed with girls underwear, shave my legs, and she couldn't handle that. So the next step was to go to the bishop of our church, which we were both very friendly with. So we walk into the bishop's office, and my ex-wife was expecting me to denounce Nancy, denounce who I really felt I was in front of the bishop. She thought the bishop was going to take care of me at that point. So again, to the bishop's office, he started talking to me about cross-dressing and how biblically wrong it is, and don't you love your wife and this and that. And my head was ready to explode, and I just stood up and said, I can't do this anymore. And I walked out of the bishop's office. My ex-wife came running after me. She says, you really want to do this? And I said, I don't really want to do this. I have to do this. So 2 weeks later, I got served divorce papers. Through my whole life, I went through this suppressing the feeling, purging and dressing again, and purging and dressing again. And it just got too overwhelming. I just couldn't do that anymore. It was years and years since I was 12, like I said. When I look back, it was just a bunch of suppressing feelings and accepting my feelings, suppressing my feelings and accepting my feelings. So after all these years, I realized there was nothing to be fixed. Everything was good. I was fixed already. So after 20 years of marriage and now being divorced, I went on Plenty of Fish, and I found this girl that was skiing like I was skiing, and we ended up hooking up, still no one knowing that Nancy was inside of this person, Hank. And so we bought a house together. We lived together for about 2 years. And one week she said she was going on vacation with a bunch of girls, and she wanted to know if I wanted to go. But I saw an opportunity now that I'll have a whole house to myself for a week to dress up without anybody knowing. And I never did that my whole life. My whole life, all of us, most of the transgender community, we did it within an hour or overnight. We were able to go out overnight or within an hour just getting dressed up. So this was my first time in my life that I was able to dress as Nancy, go to sleep as Nancy, wake up as Nancy, and just spend days dressed up. So the day before she came back from her vacation, I was in our exercise room on an exercise bicycle looking in the mirror. And I'm looking in as Hank now. I took off all my girl clothes. And I looked at myself and I said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to die a lie. I said, I don't want my 3 daughters to go through my stuff after we pass away, and everybody goes through your stuff, and find wigs and dresses and everything like that and say, what was Dad up to? So that's the moment that I decided that I was going to be Nancy for the rest of my life. So she came home from vacation. I gave her 1 day to go to work just to kind of smoke cleared a little bit. And she came home that night, and I had a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the table. I said, honey, start drinking. So she started drinking. I told her my story, tears coming down her eyes. And she goes, let's sell the house. And I said, don't you want to wait 2 months? I'm the same person inside. It's just the outside. So at this point, I wasn't even sure if I was ready to transition completely, but I knew I couldn't suppress my feminine feelings anymore. And I needed to share that with somebody or with everybody at this point. And she just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And she said, let's sell the house. I tried to talk her into giving it a couple of months, and she said no. So the next day, she called all our friends and threw me under the bus, as being transgender, dressing up as a woman. What saved me was the day after that, Bruce Jenner came out in the newspapers that he was transgender. So now everybody knew. I didn't have to explain to anybody. The news, TV was all explaining what transgender was. Now I realized that I had to tell the people that I loved first. So I called my sisters up, especially I'm glad they were sisters. It'd be so much harder with brothers, I would think. So I told my sisters, and they seemed to accept it. I think also when they look back, because I told her, I go, all those fights you were having with Dawn, that was because of me. I was the one wearing your clothes, So she got a chuckle out of that. And she said, okay, but I think you should hold off on telling Mom. And, I said okay, and I've done this a lot where I say okay just to appease people. But as soon as I hung up that phone, I knew I had to tell Mom. So we were riding in the car one day, and I said, Mom, I'm going to transition. And she goes, okay, it's okay if you want to be a cross-dresser. And I said, no, Mom, I'm not going to do this part-time. I want to become a woman. I'm going to transition to become a woman. And she started crying because I have two sisters. And she said to me, she says, you're my only son. Can't you wait till I die before you transition? And again, I didn't want to break my mom's heart. So I said, okay, I wouldn't do it. So weeks went by. At this point, I was Hank Monday through Friday, dressing as a man. Come Friday after work, I would become Nancy. So it's like Cinderella. I was Cinderella for the weekend. So, and my mom would call me up on the weekends, and I said, Mom, I can't come over because I'm Nancy now. During the week, if you want me to come over, no problem. So she called me up one Sunday, weeks have gone by now. She called me up one Sunday. She goes, why don't you come over for dinner? I said, Mom, I can't. I'm Nancy. And I could hear the hesitation, in her voice. She goes, okay, come over, but don't wear a dress. I said, okay. So I went back home because I was wearing a dress. I put on dungarees and a Victoria's Secret t-shirt, still wearing makeup. And at that point, my hair was blonde. It wasn't long, but it was short blonde. And went over the house. She opened the door. And I could see, like, oh, God, okay. And she took a deep breath. And she said, okay, Hank. She wasn't using Nancy yet. She couldn't do that yet. So we sat down. We had dinner together. And she goes to me, she goes, you want to go shopping? I want to get something from Macy's. And I was like, in my mind, I'm saying, did my mother ask me, Nancy, to go shopping with her? And I said, yeah, sure. So the next thing you know, we're in Macy's, and I'm not only shopping with her, she's waiting outside the fitting room while I put stuff on and come out and ask her opinion. And after that, it just got better and better. And now my mom loves me. She's not only does she love me, she calls me Nancy all the time. She uses the right pronouns. She's 89 years old. And her friends, she tells her friends, and she's proud of me. She's proud of my strength to be who I really am. And for my mom embracing me, who I was one of the most important things in my life. She taught me love. My mom has a stack of cards from being a nurse, from patients, because of her love. And her love continued in me. And the reason why I get love from my children and from even work is because of the love that my mom installed in me. At 57, my family knew now. My sisters and my mom knew, and work didn't know yet. So I was living in my own apartment from Monday to Friday as Hank, dressed as a mechanic, and then on Friday afternoon, because I would get home early, I would go upstairs and, like Superman, I would just rip off my man clothes. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand wearing men's clothes, and I would dress as Nancy. So the weekends, I would be Nancy, and during the week, I would be Hank. So my neighbors, which were mostly single women, saw this good-looking young man come into the complex, and they started, who's going to go be with him, and started fixing me up with different neighbors. And I didn't know this was all going on. This was hearsay. Later on, I found out. Eventually, on the weekends, all of a sudden, they see these different women coming in and out. So from now, they think I'm a player. But meanwhile, it was me because I had like 3 different wigs. So I would come in as a blonde, come in as a brunette, come in as a redhead, different days. So they were seeing these different women come in over the weekend. So months went by. It was summertime. It was August. There was like 4 or 5 of them outside in lawn chairs, Queens type of thing, drinking vodka and tonics. And I pulled up in front of the house as Nancy. And I said, okay, here's another one of those times. I just got to take a deep breath. I wasn't going to hide at this point in my life. I'm ready to go. And I walked out of the car. I started walking to the apartment. And one of the ladies would go, hey, where's Hank? And I turned towards her and I said, I'm Hank, And she, again, the whole drop face and stuff like that. And all the neighbors came over to me to see me, just to see what's going on here. But after that, they all accepted me. My downstairs neighbor was my fashion coordinator. I used to call her up on the cell phone, and I used to run downstairs, and she used to tell me what to wear, what not to wear. I would go back upstairs. I would get a phone call from her, and she would go, hey, Nancy, could you put up a shelf for me? So she says I was the best neighbor because I could do both male and female stuff. Not only did she help me fashion myself dressing and tell me what to wear and not to wear. We went out to dinner a lot. We actually went out with the other neighbors, and that was so great for me to be able to go out as a woman with other women, with other women. So having my neighbors embrace me meant the world to me. It was so important because it was just another step in my transition. So 62 years old, on hormones now. I started hormones. It's been probably about 6 months into my hormones at 62. I had to go to divorce court and met my ex-wife there, of course. And she turned to me after we were talking for a while. She goes, your oldest daughter knows about you. And I said, I didn't know that. And this is like 3 years. She told my oldest daughter 2 years before that. So I said, wow, really? And so as soon as I got out of court, I got my daughter on the phone. She was living in Colorado at that point. And she goes, yeah, Dad, I know. And I said, why didn't you tell me? She goes, I just, I thought it was too private for you. I didn't want to let you know that I knew. I love you no matter what. So we're crying on the phone together. And she offered me, because she thought that if I had such a hard time in New York, that I could come live with her in Colorado. And like, oh my God, for my daughter to offer me that after knowing that I'm transgender was awesome. So by the end of the phone call, we're texting each other outfits and which ones we like, which ones we don't like. So at this point, after talking to my oldest daughter, I knew I needed to talk to my other two daughters, my middle daughter and my youngest daughter. So I called them up. They live local, and we went to a local bar. We sat in a booth. So I sat on one side, they sat on the other side. And we had dinner, they had a drink, and I was getting all nervous now because I knew I had to tell them. So I said, girls, won't you have another drink? And they said, no, Dad, we got it. I go, I think you should have another drink. So we started on a second drink, and I started my story, what I've been, from 12 years old on, what's been happening in my life. And as I'm telling the stories, I could see both of them. I could see tears coming down their eyes, and of course, tears are coming down my eyes also. They were in shock. I could see them. Not only were they crying, but they were kind of in shock. But slowly, as I ended my story, they started asking some questions. I don't even remember the questions because I was so high on just endorphins. What was going on right now in front of my daughters. They were almost my last frontier. And so we finished dinner, and we walked out, and it was very quiet after dinner, and we walked out quietly and gave each other's hugs and stuff like that and kissed, and they both left. I got in my car, and maybe like an hour later, my middle daughter texted me, and she said, Dad, I love you. I just want you to be happy. Whatever you decide to do is okay with me in your life. I said, oh God, thank you. So I was waiting for my youngest daughter to text me, but I didn't get anything from her that night or the next day. Finally, on the third day, I get a text from my baby, and she said, basically almost the same thing, but it's something really cool. She said, Dad, you could change the cover of a book, but the story stays the same. I love you, and I want you to be happy, so everything's okay. I would have the girls over for dinner once a week, and I was seeing my therapist, and my therapist said to me, she goes, don't shock your kids into your feminine self, Nancy. Just do it slowly. So first time they came over for dinner, I had my nails done. Second time, I did it bi-weekly. I didn't wait long. It was like every week they sort of changed every time they came over. And they didn't see me during the week. So it was just that one time every day. So first was nails. Then it was a Victoria's Secret t-shirt. Then it was makeup. And then finally it was the hair. And that kind of, within those couple of weeks, I could see they got comfortable and they realized where their life was going to be with me. And I could see they were accepting me and loving me. Years went by, and my middle daughter got married about a month ago. And she called me up and she says, okay, Dad, you have to walk me down the aisle. And I said, okay. Because I was ready to do whatever she wanted to do. It was her wedding. If she wanted me to sit in the pew and just be there, that's all I wanted to do. But for her to ask me to walk her down the aisle was unbelievable. And the funny thing with that was that I couldn't pick out my dress because I like wearing low-cut dresses, showing my tattoos, and I was told no glitter. I couldn't wear glitter at the wedding for my 3 daughters, and they needed to okay the dress. So after many dresses, we all agreed on a dress I would wear. So just like I said, just about a month ago, I walked my middle daughter down the aisle with my ex-wife on one side and me on the other. In the archdiocese, the Catholic archdiocese in Rockville Center, out of all Long Island. So it was a big thing. And at the wedding, I did Daddy's first dance. And even with that, she came to me. She goes, how do you want them to call you up to do Daddy's first dance? You want Nancy? Do you want Daddy? So they called me up. They said, Nancy to the dance floor. So I went up to the dance floor. I picked John Mayer's Daughter, which is a really slow song. It's a beautiful song if you have kids, a daughter. And I get up there, and being a guy all my life and dancing with women, I got really close to her and started doing one of these. And she goes, Daddy, not so close. I said, okay. So we started dancing a little further away. And after that, 2 weeks later, my oldest daughter called me up, and she's having a baby. She was pregnant, and she goes, Dad, I got 2 grandmas already. She goes, we have my ex-wife, her mom, grandma, and his mom was grandma. She goes, do you want to be grandma? And I said, well, again, I'm a very easygoing person, so I said, whatever you want me. She goes, what about Nana? And I said, Nana, yeah, Nana, Nancy. And then in my head, I said, Nana with the banana. And we both started laughing. She goes, okay, that's good, but wait for the kid to get a little older. Tell him about the banana part. And that's it. Yeah. I work for the Transit Authority. I'm a mechanic, plant and equipment. So I don't directly work on the buses, but I work on everything in the building. And it's all guys. I work with like 150 guys and 3 women. The women aren't even in my department. They're in a different department. I realized, again, now at this point in my life, I needed to, even though there was a lot of fear coming out to the guys at work, I knew it was going to be a lot harder than coming out to my children, coming out to men, having them, judge you and all that other stuff. So at this point, I knew it was time. I didn't care where I was going to go with this. I just knew I had to do it. So I went down to my superintendent's office, big boss, and I knocked on his door, and he said, yes, Hank, what could I do for you? I said, I got to talk to you in private. So he opened up the door. I got in, and I said to him, I go, I'm going to transition. And he goes, oh, great. What position are you going for? I said, no. It's not a job title. It's not a job position. I'm transitioning into a woman. And again, he said, okay. And I pulled out my phone, and I showed him my phone. I showed him cross-dressing pictures of me. And he said, okay, we need to do something about that. He called EEO, Human Resources of the Transit Authority, got together with them 2 times, all the presidents. We sat at a round table asking me questions, how I feel comfortable, what do they want, what should they do for me, and blah, blah, blah. So after the 2 meetings, the 3rd meeting we met, and they asked me if I could wait 2 months before I present myself as Nancy. I didn't even ask them why, but they told me why right away, actually. They said that they wanted to start a gender awareness program for the Transit Authority, which was never done before. And so they started teaching not only my building, not only my bus, but all through the Transit Authority, trains and buses. After the 2 months went by, and I got the phone call from them that say, okay, Nancy, it's your turn. I went to work. I came in slowly, nails, top, makeup. The last thing I did was boobs, because I was scared to put boobs on, but I finally put a bra on and boobs on, and at that point I went to work completely in femme. And I did set myself up for this whole thing, because before I came out, I was showing my good friends at work, what's going to happen in about a month or 2. I'm going to come as a woman. I would show them pictures. And I knew gossip would go from them to another person. So I think it kind of made it easier on me that people were already talking. It wasn't like I just walked in as Nancy and boom. They knew it was coming. They knew that, the storm was coming. And the day I came out, fist bumps, you're the bravest person I know. It was unbelievable. The guys that weren't sure just stayed away. They kind of, but over the time, seeing that nothing has changed. When they saw me on the floor with my wrenches, and getting dirty and laying on the floor, working on a scrubber, I work on scrubbers, they saw that I was the same person. So they started approaching me slowly, one at a time, like, how do you want us to are you a he or she? What do you want us to call you? You want Nancy? And I said, yeah, sure, Nancy. So, so it's been unbelievable, and it gets better every time. It gets better. My supervisors, when they call my supervisors to have some done in the offices, they always ask for Nancy. They want me up there, so it's really good. We also have a gym at work, and I was a personal trainer as Hank, and I was going to this depot for 10 years as Hank. So I would go up to the gym. We have a really nice gym, and I was training some of the guys on physical fitness. I was showing them what to do to get bigger. So after my transition, the first day I walked up there, I went up there with just a sports bra, not knowing that wasn't gym etiquette for a woman. You had to cover your belly. Most women, as far as I see also, they all wear tank tops and everything. So the first incident that I had in the gym was the guy who runs the gym said, hey, Nancy, do you mind, covering up, not wearing a sports bra? I said, okay, I had no problem with that. So the day after, I'm on the treadmill, the gym is packed, all these guys are lifting weights, music's going, everything like that. I get on the treadmill, there's a guy named Tiger on the treadmill next to me, and we're both running, and he goes, wait a minute, shut the music off. So one of the guys goes over, shut the music off. Everybody stops working out, because obviously they were talking about me before I got there, because I go there at the same time every day at 11 o'clock. So music stops, everybody stops working out. Tiger goes to me, Nancy, could we talk about women in front of you, and all that stuff we say, bad things and all this other stuff? And I look at him in the eyes and I said, I eat pussy too. And that was the icebreaker. Everybody just started laughing. Music went back on. We started running. Everybody started working out. And the way I look at it is, a lot of men are very insecure of their masculinity. They're insecure. So if they knew that I liked men, that would get them all bent out of shape. So I realized, for me telling them that, I didn't want to tell them I'm bisexual, because I really am bisexual, but I didn't want to even let them know that. I just told them, no, I'm only interested in women. And I think that diffused a lot of that. It's been wonderful, and it gets better every year. It's just awesome. For anybody that's deciding to come out at work, my suggestion is to go to your superiors. Just don't take it upon yourself to just decide that you're going to come in it as a trans man or a trans woman. Go to your supervisors. Make sure they go to Human Resources or EEO, because they have to support you. They have to do it, and that's the only way to do it. You can't do it on your own. You need help, and just don't be fearful.